5 Lincoln 103, 5 Lincoln 102, Lincoln 103 and 102.
Responding to 401 parking structure, section 1 boy.
Henry 8, Henry 9. Respond to gate 437 Bravo for your dignitary detail. 3K 911 unattended 400 lower level near carousel 4 black bag. GTA in progress 401 parking structure section 4 boy.
Responding to 401 parking structure, section 1 boy.
415 passenger onboard aircraft.
Control 2 Franklin en route.
484 suspect, female, Hispanic, 28 years of age, blue jeans, no further.
Control 5 Frank 401 is en route.
$74 degrees, 0700 hours. You're listening to the Private Officer Beat Radio on this Friday morning. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special edition of the Private Officer Beat Radio. Glad that you're with us. I'm your host, Rick McCann, and we're broadcasting live today from our Charlotte studio, Charlotte, North Carolina, where we have just gorgeous weather outside our windows today, and a lot more of it expected for the next week or so after all of that rain, torrential rain in our area, as well as some tornadoes. We are glad to have that gone and to have more spring-like weather. In fact, we actually had some cold evenings in the last few days, all the way down into the 30s. Felt more like fall time. Hey, we've got a lot to talk about here today on this week's show. And of course, we have a lot of news to bring you and information. And we're going to be talking about a problem that we're seeing across the country from north to south, east to west, and that is, and really it's nothing new, but that is the growing methods that security companies are using to sidestep the law. Ways to go around the law. Some might call it workarounds. We call it sidestepping the law. We'll be talking a lot more about that coming up. And we've got some great news to bring you, some upcoming events, and we'll be bringing that up here shortly as well. This past week and the previous week, we've had a lot of officers, law enforcement killed in the line of duty by gunfire. We're seeing that on the rise, while on the other hand, we're seeing more and more municipalities and counties who are trying to reduce what police can do. In some states, some agencies have issued guidelines as to what type of traffic enforcement can be done and when. I know even in our own state, there are some communities that have decreased, not increased, but decreased traffic enforcement, and some agencies don't conduct traffic enforcement for minor offenses such as a tail light out, a brake light, or a tag light. I recently questioned a local law enforcement agency in my own community, asking why they haven't stepped up traffic enforcement with the large increase of traffic accidents and our population growth and so many other contributors that would point to the need for stepped-up enforcement, and yet they're kind of hanging in their status quo as they believe that it's not politically correct, I guess you would say, for law enforcement to do their job anymore. Traffic enforcement is a necessary component of law enforcement, and it has to be done, or we'll see a lot more fatalities. We're seeing fatalities and increased DUI across the nation. There was a number of years when DUIs had gone down quite a bit, but that has increased, including in some areas it's primary. Law enforcement seeing more and more drivers under the influence of pot, marijuana. And there are different indicators that indicate if it's drugs or alcohol, and the way they test for that is if they don't pass the FSTs, the field sobriety test, then they can be brought in and take a blood test. And so there's a lot more need for enforcement. I'm not really sure why some agencies have backed off. We have, in the last week or so, we have seen a number of security officers involved in armed confrontations and shootings. We put out a very detailed report a few months ago about the use of deadly force by security officers. The number one state who had the most use of force, deadly force, lethal force, and the most lethal force used against private security. The number one state, although there were several that were very close, the number one state, hands down, was Texas. And that continues to be the case. I don't want to say it's the land of the Wild Wild West, but we do notice more security officers there are armed than in many other states. And we also know that more security officers there are doing more actual enforcement and doing a lot more proactive security. It's not just observe and report. And that's what we're seeing actually in a number of states. Just talked to Idaho law enforcement of all places, and they're telling me that in certain areas, especially the metropolitan cities, security really has stepped up to help them to lower the crime and to reduce certain violent crime, and it's a necessary. It really is. It's needed, and so good for them. We're seeing that in more and more states, and I think that security is definitely an assistance, a help to law enforcement, but they also need to know where the line is and how to stay within the boundaries of their scope of authority and their duties, and that really is a compliance issue that we've seen from companies who don't supervise very well. I think overall, and I've said this many times before, private security, they're trying to do a job, and they do a very good job overall, but unfortunately, they don't have a lot of help or training, and that poses a great problem. Coming up later, though, we are going to be talking about sidestepping the law and using illegal workarounds to avoid being in compliance with regulatory laws and state statutes. And to give you more sense of what I'm talking about and the seriousness of this problem, we actually saw 3 companies this past week. Within 7 days, we ran across 3 companies that were hiring unlicensed personnel, and even those with serious crimes on their records. So we'll be talking more about this coming up in today's program. We want to recognize our sponsor, Field Investigations. If you're looking for an investigator for insurance fraud or employee theft, missing persons, criminal and civil investigations, contact our friends at Field Investigations. Check them out online, fieldinvestigations.us. They are professionals in their field, and you will be extremely satisfied with their investigations that they do for you. We have our annual Officer Award Program coming up, and we'll be telling you a whole lot more about that in the next few days, and I'll give you some more information probably in this program as well, but keep that in mind. But I do want to let you know that you don't have to wait until there is an annual award program. You can actually send us your nominee, whether that's an employee, your owner of the business, or even yourself. Go to our website, privateofficer.org, and sign them up. Nominate them today for an award. Everyone deserves to be recognized for the good work that they do. Also, don't forget, if you're not receiving our news and you want to, go to our site right there at privateofficer.org, and you can immediately sign up for free breaking news, our bi-weekly newsletters, our Officer Down reports, and special offers just by going to the website, privateofficer.org. A box will drop down. You don't have to search for it. It's going to be searching for you. A box will drop down, and you'll be able to fill in that form right quick and get on our breaking news email alerts. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, of course, we have a lot of news to share with you. We have a lot of information to pass along, and then we are going to be talking about too many companies trying to sidestep the law, trying to get around the law using some shifty methods. It's a problem, folks. It really is a problem. And nationally, we're seeing it more and more. And there's a lot of excuses, and there are some reasons why companies are choosing to do this, but still it leads to liability issues, it leads to legal consequences, it leads to lawsuits, it could even lead to the suspension of your regulatory security license if you're in a regulatory security state. All right, we're taking a break, coming right back. Don't go away. You're listening to the Private Officer Beat Radio.
Doing drugs is like being on top of the world. Everyone says so. Everyone seems to be having one dandy old time. Hey, it's part of growing up. Or is it? Just think about this. Before you go and do something you've never done before, you just better know what you're jumping into.
Slow down.
And move over.
When you see lights, vest,
Or reflectors. Please, give us some room. Slow down. And move over.
we look out for you.
So look out for us.
Please,
Please,
please.
slow down. And move over.
It's the law.
It's the law. It's the law.
All right, we are over at the news desk now. We've got a lot of news breaking, and we want to get right to that. In Massachusetts, a brand new bill called the Sean Collier Act would make it possible for private law enforcement, private police working at campuses to get the same benefits when officers are killed in the line of duty as those of public agencies and schools. As of right now, a private police officer who dies in the line of duty, their family cannot collect any benefits from the federal government. And this has been going on for a long time, and now there's a bill in Massachusetts to make that go away. This all stems from an MIT police officer who was killed in the line of duty by one of the suspects in the Boston Marathon murder bombing, and they murdered him when he tried to apprehend one of the suspects. This needs to happen across the country. There's a lot of private police officers working out there, not only on college campuses, but in hospitals and other facilities. They have the same law enforcement duties and authority as any municipal, county, or state officer. So we need to get that worked out as a national bill, and POI has been working on that for several years. We've been in contact with the Justice Department several times, and hopefully this will become an act across the country. In Oklahoma City, police there say a woman shoplifting at Walmart pulled a knife on loss prevention agents when they went to apprehend her. Police said that 37-year-old Heather Derriman was seen concealing spray paint, knives, and a padlock in her purse, but when loss prevention tried to apprehend her, she pulled a knife. She was eventually taken into custody by an off-duty police officer who had to draw his firearm. Police in Salisbury, North Carolina, has jailed a man in a similar robbery attempt at the Marshall store there. He also pulled a weapon. Gregory Allen O'Gara, 32, has been charged with robbery after getting into confrontation with store security. He pulled a 9mm, and police apprehended him. He's being held on a $20,000 bond. In Orlando, Florida, a police officer last year was called to a shoplifting incident, and trying to apprehend the suspect, he shot and killed the suspect. Now, the 17-year veteran has been arrested himself for manslaughter. Master Police Officer Anthony Wongshine is facing manslaughter charges. He's been arrested and released on bond pending a court appearance. A murder in Las Vegas, nothing new. Tragically, they have a lot of high crime there. A murder in Las Vegas, though, resulted in the arrest of a security guard. Michael Land, 38, is charged with murdering a female. Not sure if this was during off-duty hours or on duty. Nonetheless, he is being held without bond pending his trial. A man dressed as a security guard in Houston, Texas, raped a woman. According to law enforcement, this happened in the district at Washington Apartments in the 2000 block of T.C. Jester Boulevard. Police say that the man appeared to be a security guard and had a gun. Police are investigating this further to determine if it was an actual security guard or somebody posing as one. Authorities say that a man actually raped a woman, and this is an unbelievable story all the way around, in the police station at the Fairbanks, Alaska Police Department. Dispatchers noticed on surveillance camera a man raping a woman inside the Fairbanks Police Department. The woman appeared to be unconscious or asleep. The dispatcher called on-duty officers to respond. When they arrived, they had to pull him off the unconscious woman. Devon Thomas Gage, 25, has been arrested, and he told officers he thought it would be adventurous to rape an incapacitated woman. What a sick person. Phoenix police had to arrest one of their own after he's been accused of punching, slapping, and assaulting a shoplifting suspect who was already handcuffed. Police there say that he was seen on camera confronting 22-year-old Roger Moran. He took him into custody, and then after some type of dispute, the officer, Timothy Barati, evidently assaulted the suspect while handcuffed. 3 teenagers in New Orleans have been charged with the murder of a security officer who came out after hearing a car alarm going off. She interrupted the burglary, tried to apprehend one of the suspects, 17-year-old Emmanuel Pipkins, and he shot and killed the security officer. 18-year-old girlfriend of Pipkins also arrested, and a third party has been arrested in this as well. Again, this is a situation where off-duty officers often intervene in crime. This appears to be one of those cases where she was actually off-duty and trying to do the right thing, trying to do a good thing. We are following this story, and we'll keep you updated. An investigation is underway in Minneapolis High School where 2 security officers are accused of assaulting students. They pepper sprayed several students at a bus stop Friday. Police are investigating this. No word as to exactly what happened or what started the confrontation. In South Carolina, at the Hilton Head Plantation, security officers there stopped a 26-year-old man from entering the community. Police say security officers requested identification, and he gave them improper ID. Security then called the county sheriff's office, and they said he had multiple warrants from several jurisdictions and to take him into custody. Security officers in South Carolina do have law enforcement authority on property and are considered the same as deputy sheriff, and they did take the suspect into custody and arrested him until the county could get there. A man in Fauquier County, Virginia, attempted suicide at a hospital. Security and law enforcement responded. They prevented the suspect from committing suicide, although he did try to use a firearm to do so. Coming out of New Jersey, Monmouth County, New Jersey, an off-duty security officer who was killed last year and a volunteer firefighter during a confrontation, authorities there say that the suspect in the case has pled guilty and will receive a 13-year prison sentence for manslaughter. In Manchester Township, Pennsylvania, Rashawn Wood, 32, has been arrested for assaulting a hospital security officer at the York Hospital after he was brought in on disorderly conduct charges for urinating in public, and now he's facing assault on a security officer. In Alabama, the Alabama Department of Corrections has added a new position within their ranks. They've now added the security officer position, who will be staffing non-correctional areas and assisting the corrections department in other duties. In Milwaukee, Wisconsin, last year, a fight broke out. A shooting occurred of a man who was in a wheelchair during a fight at a Mexican restaurant. Security officers were arrested, but now they have been found not guilty. The court saw that they were actually defending themselves, and they found these security officers not guilty. In Houston, Texas, a man was hospitalized after being shot to the chest, and a security officer found him lying on the side of the road at 2:40 in the morning as he was on his way to work. Houston police say it may have been from a disturbance at a nearby Spring Hill Hotel. There's no suspects in the case, but it's a good possibility that the security officer did save the man's life. In Tennessee, they just passed a new law that municipalities cannot pass ordinances requiring alarm permits. There's a big legal case happening in Georgia where the city of Sandy Springs and several others are beginning to fine alarm companies for false alarms. The governor of Tennessee, Bill Lee, said he does not want that type of thing in Tennessee, and he has signed a bill saying that cities cannot collect false alarm fees, fines, or require permits. In Charlotte, North Carolina, the Carolina Panthers' longtime security officer passed away suddenly. Floyd Ronnie Cochran, a longtime security officer, effectively known as Bubba, died Friday at the age of 72. He was a U.S. Navy veteran, and he worked for a company called ShowPro Entertainment Services as an on-field crowd management supervisor. Many in the Panthers organization said that he was a dear friend and will be sadly missed. In Virginia Beach, earlier this week, a multi-vehicle accident on I-264 included that of an armored truck. They say the armored truck tried to swerve to avoid stopped traffic when he hit several vehicles. Several minor injuries were reported. The traffic was backed up for 3 hours. An investigation continues in Louisville, Kentucky, where 6 police officers have been arrested for a scheme that they put together. Officers Michael Abernathy, Dante Booker, Cortez Ernest, Jackie Miller, Ashley Spratt, and Ronique Riacum all formed a private security company and began charging companies for services that they were already providing as law enforcement. Apparently, they were providing services while they were supposed to be on law enforcement duties, while they were on patrol, charging from $500 to $10,000. All of them have been booked on multiple felonies and are facing disciplinary actions and a court trial. Police are saying that a teen worker faces explosion-inducing panic after an explosion of liquid nitrate at a mall in Columbus, Ohio. The unnamed juvenile, 17-year-old, was treated himself for some injuries to his face and temporary hearing loss. Apparently, he was working at a kiosk inside the mall when he decided to put some liquid nitrate into a soda bottle and see what happens, and evidently it exploded. It caused panic throughout the mall, and an off-duty police sergeant nearby saw what happened. He defused the situation and took the suspect into custody. There is a lot of news breaking, and if you want to have news coming to you, if you want breaking news when it happens, go to our website, privateofficer.org, privateofficer.org, and sign up today. The news alerts will come to your mailbox when news is happening. You'll also get officer down reports and an occasional offer, discounts, and a whole lot more. A suspect is in custody in Houston, Texas, after a shooting at the Lyndon B. Johnson Hospital. Police said a man outside the hospital was firing gunshots for no reason. Police and security took him into custody. Also happening in Poughkeepsie, New York, a Poughkeepsie High School security officer manning a door found a loaded handgun in the backpack of a student. Police say the security officer made the firearm safe, took the student into custody, and he is facing charges. A longtime St. Paul, Minnesota police officer and the mayor's chief security officer died suddenly at the age of 59. Benny Williams, a longtime St. Paul officer who is well-known and liked in the community, had a sudden illness and was hospitalized last Sunday night and unfortunately did not make it. The community has known of Officer Williams and said he was a great officer, and he will be sadly missed. A man in Fort Worth, Texas, who was shot by a security officer left the scene and drove himself to the hospital. Police said that the man drove to an Arlington hospital after he was shot at least once during a confrontation with a security officer at a bar in Fort Worth. The security officer is under investigation by law enforcement because the man says he was unarmed and was shot for no reason. In Mississippi, Loudoun County, Mississippi, a constable, Willie Houston Hoot West, 81 years of age, was killed during an automobile accident while on duty. Constable West was out serving subpoenas and court documents when he lost control of his vehicle and ran off the road into a tree and unfortunately succumbed to his injuries. In Evansville, Indiana, police say a disturbance between a trespasser and a security officer led to the arrest of the trespassing man. Police said that when they searched him, they also found synthetic cannabis and other drugs on him. He's been arrested on multiple charges and taken into custody. No word as to whether or not he posted bail. In Omaha, Nebraska, police there are going to begin a pilot program expanding their mental health deployment. Authorities there say that they're going to hire several mental health therapists to man police precincts and respond to calls involving mental health. And we are seeing this across the country. This is really a thing that colleges have done for a while, and now some police departments are beginning to deploy mental health specialists and therapists out into the field. That's going to do it for this part of the news. We always have news. Go to our website at privateofficer.org today and sign up for the news. Receive breaking news, officer down reports, special news alerts, and occasional special offers and discounts. Go to privateofficer.org. And if you're not a member of POI, and who doesn't want to be, because there's a lot of benefits and advantages of becoming a member, go to privateofficer.org and sign up today. Right now we have a $99 special lifetime offer. You can become a lifetime member just for $99. You're going to save $80. You're going to get free lapel pin, patches, and a whole lot more. Check us out today at privateofficer.org. We're going to take one more quick break. When we come back, we've got some more information to share with you, and we're going to be talking about how so many companies are sidestepping the law.
For some children, America isn't the land of promise. It's a place where every day is a struggle. Because today in America, 1 in 6 children lives below the poverty line. For these children, living in poverty means going without medicine, going without food, going without a warm home, or even a roof over your head. And that's life for nearly 13 million children of all races, all across America. Where will you draw the line and get involved? You can help these children and their families find a way out of poverty for good. And you can make a difference in more ways than you think. Will you help? Go to povertyusa.org today. Because 1 in 6 children in poverty is one too many. A message.
Sidestepping the law, trying to figure out workarounds, how to get through something without really complying with the law, with the requirements of the state, the city. It's really becoming a problem that many companies are involved in, and I can tell you from my own experience working in this business for as long as I have, that this isn't just 1 or 2 companies. This isn't just a handful of companies. This really has become a huge issue across the nation. We're talking about people who are sidestepping the law, not walking in a gray area, but sidestepping the law altogether. I mean, there's a gray area that many people think they have found. There might be an occasional opportunity that comes along when people just don't obey the law. People think, well, I'm going to do this and nobody's going to know about it. And, who's it going to hurt? It's all about money, and, they completely ignore what is the law. They completely ignore the requirements. When they do that, and not just do it once, it was by mistake, I didn't know. Once they do it once and get away with it, many companies will do it again and again and again. So today, we're talking about sidestepping the law. I know that's not you. I know there's none of our listeners and none of our members who do that, but trust me on this. There are many companies who do this on a regular basis. Just recently, in our own state of North Carolina, a security company hired a unlicensed security officer and put him armed at a credit union. And I guess unlucky for him that credit union just so happened to be targeted by a robbery crew. Two armed robbery suspects targeted the credit union and tried to rob it. Now, the security officer on duty was armed. He fired several shots, and they ran off through some woods and across through some business offices, and he continued to shoot at them. He emptied one magazine and 16 shots. He didn't hit them. Thank goodness he didn't hit any customer or unsuspecting vehicle driving by and nobody was injured. During the police investigation, they said, well, we could say he was justified in the first couple shots because they were armed, they did pose a threat, it was imminent. But when they ran off, you know what I'm saying? They ran off. And they were running on foot through businesses. And instead of the security officer retreating, he continued firing his weapon until the magazine was empty. And at that point, law enforcement determined he was reckless, negligent, and there was no threat, no need for him to continue firing. And the North Carolina Private Protection Board, which is the licensing regulatory agency in North Carolina, got involved. And they sent one of their investigators to look into the matter. And lo and behold, the security officer wasn't licensed. Several other people weren't licensed. The company had other similar problems, other regulatory problems, and the company was forced out of business. Their license was taken away. Now, the security company, when interviewed, didn't have a lot to say when talking to the media, when the media contacted them. But the security officer said, I was just doing my job. I was licensed, it expired, I forgot, blah, blah. But the company should have known that. And the company is liable. It's the company's job to know when someone is or isn't licensed and to only hire, obviously, licensed security officers. There's still a few states where there's no requirements. There's no regulatory force, nobody checking up on anybody, and, you don't have to be licensed. But in a regulatory state, in a state where you have to be licensed, it's the company's job to be sure they're hiring only people who are licensed, who have completed the training, and at least have some basic knowledge of what you can and can't do and what is right and wrong. And, the problem was with this company, they just didn't do it, and it was not their first time. This is a problem, folks. We've seen this same scenario play out across the nation time and time again. CNN, just about 3 years ago, did a whole series on similar problems in the industry. NBC, Dateline, did a whole series on this similar problem and the use of force without a whole lot of training. Not too long ago, they highlighted that. And locally, we see it in local TV stations. Just recently, I did an interview with a TV station out of Georgia, and they were doing a series. The reporter had done numerous stories about unlicensed security companies working at malls, special events, different outdoor events, and one security company who had a business license but no sled license from South Carolina and no Georgia license said, we didn't know that. We got a business license. I mean, come on, people. You know that there's a regulatory license requirement. As a business owner, as a company, you're supposed to check in. No matter if you're a plumbing company or a sanitation company or an electrician, you know you have to check in with the state and find out what type of license is required before you operate. Don't put it off on everybody else. Don't shrug it off and try to make excuses. Just admit, hey, I did something wrong and I'll get it corrected. Just in the last few weeks, I ran into a company in Virginia. Same story, different name, different day. This company has a minimal security company license. They provide armed and unarmed training, armed and unarmed security service, but they were advertising to be a training school, which is a separate license and verification process and insurance, different insurance requirement completely. And they were sending out written proposals trying to sidestep the law, trying to supersede the law, and sending out proposals to companies, of course, low bidding other licensed, legit schools in the area, including Armor. And they were sending these out to people like they were legit, like they were in business, like they had a legal right to do so. And a little investigation finds that they were not only not licensed, but the guys who owned it were not instructors, were not licensed, and that they only had minimal certification for what they were doing. When you have a school in Virginia and in other states, you have to be licensed for each category. They were licensed for none, but even if they were licensed, they could only qualify for 3 or 4 of the more than 24 categories. So it was a mess. When you come across these type of people, when you see these type of operators, when you find these businesses existing in your area, you need to speak up, stand up, come forward, notify the proper authorities. Another security quasi-operator in Texas providing unlicensed security officers, 2 of them with felons with felonies on their record. They knew they couldn't be licensed by the Department of Public Safety in Texas, not with the crimes they had on their record, but they put them in uniform and put them on the job site anyways. And how about companies who provide access control and search people's bags and use security wands to detect metal, firearms? How about these companies who try to hide under the title, the category of staff services or event staff? Ridiculous. If you're providing access control at a concert, if you're providing access control at a gate at the carnival, if you're searching people, if you're wanding people, those are security duties. They fall under general security, and they need to be licensed. And if you're in a regulatory state and you try to put on the contract event staff, that's a workaround. That's sidestep trying to avoid being licensed so that you don't have to license anyone. That's unethical. It's illegal. It's improper. There are some states where you can send in your application and you'll have 90 days or 60 days to work. A lot of these event staffing companies will do that process knowing that, we'll have that person in and out of the job before those 60 or 90 days are up, and at that point he won't be licensed. And we'll keep doing it. Every year that we have that contract, we'll put the people's names in, but they're not going to be licensed because you know what? That gig will be long done and over before that 90-day or 60-day expiration. So we're not going to license him. A Maryland company was just investigated by a TV station. They found that this security company, which protects the National Harbor in Baltimore and in Prince George County, several high priority locations, had hired a sex offender and several felons. Now, after being investigated, that information, of course, was turned over to the Maryland authorities. After being investigation, the security company said, no. You see, what was happening was this. No, we don't do that kind of stuff. No, you're trying to impugn our integrity. You're trying to cause us to lose business. You're trying to cause us to have to lay off people because you're trying to destroy our reputation. Well, it's your job to know who you have on the job. It's your job to know who you're hiring. It's your job to do a background check. Even in a non-regulatory state, you should do a background check. For almost 15 years, I had offices in Alabama. And during that time, Alabama was a unregulatory state. No regulation. You could start today. No experience, no license, no insurance. Who cares? Thank goodness that's all changed. But when I was there, I ran everyone through at my expense. I did a complete background check on them. I required them to have certain certifications. We checked their driver's license to make sure it was valid. We checked sex registries. We checked the Social Security network to make sure they had a valid, legit Social Security number that belonged to them. Whether it's regulatory, required by law or not, it's up to you to know who you have in your employment in this type of business, and we did just that at quite an expensive and large cost to us. But at least we had a better idea of who we have working for us. And we've had to turn down numerous people. We still have to turn down numerous people because of their background, unfortunately. That's how it works. But this company in Maryland said, oh, no, we didn't do that. This one guy, he was a contractor. He was here to teach some classes. So we don't run backgrounds on contractors. Another guy who was working for this company, they said, oh, he was a technician. He was a surveillance technician. He wasn't a security guard. He was only there surveilling the property. He never worked as a guard, even though the TV station has video of this person in their uniform and driving their marked patrol car that clearly said security, protective services. But still, this company tried to do a workaround, tried to sidestep the law like so many others, unfortunately. And even when they were caught red-handed, no, we don't do that. A friend of mine who I've known for quite some time, who has a security company, he has fought this battle in his area, in his state, for 20 years. Competitors out there operating illegally, without a license, without the proper insurance, without the training, without everything that's required in their state of Florida. And yet, it still goes on. He reports it. They say, yeah, we'll check into it. And seldom does anything really happen. They always say, and I understand and agree, they're underfunded, they don't have enough staff to run down all these complaints, and they kind of wait until something major happens. Well, unfortunately for the public, unfortunately for the clients and customers, that might be way too late. It might be a loss of life because some unlicensed, untrained security person steps in and uses deadly force when it's not an imminent danger situation, when deadly force wasn't necessary. I get it. Competition. I get it. Overhead. I get it. It's so expensive to run a security company. 70 to 75% of the income made in the security business goes right back out to labor. 10 to 15% goes right out to insurance and licenses and other overhead. Hey, you're lucky if you're making 7 or 8% profit if you're running a legitimate office, a legitimate company. I get it. But that's not an excuse for doing things illegally. It's not an excuse for trying to sidestep the law. It's not an excuse. It doesn't give you a license to do things illegally just because you can't make money or enough money legally. And truthfully, this is exactly why many security companies do not stay in business very long. And unfortunately, the big giants, Securitas, G4S, these companies, yes, Allied Universal, someone in my office just reminded me, and others, this is why these companies stay in business and keep on growing. As stated previously, these companies operate on the McDonald's theory. It's not always quality that counts, it's quantity. If I have 20,000 billable hours in my office and I'm only making $1 per hour profit off the contract, 20,000 times $1 is still $20,000 a month net profit, times 12 months, that's $240,000 net profit. That's after payroll and taxes, insurance, and overhead. And if I've got, 25, 50, 100 offices making $200,000, then we're talking about making $50 million in profit. But the small guy, the mom and pop, the 10-man shop who has 10 people on payroll is barely making $10,000 a year in profit. And that's sad, but it's true. I've been there. I've had 9 offices in 5 states. I understand fighting against competitors who don't do it the right way, the legal way. I've been there. But I always operated within the law. I always did what was required. I always spent the money I needed to spend. And I always paid my people well above the normal average for security officers. Sidestepping the law, breaking the law, trying to find illegal go-arounds, work-throughs, and trying to rename your staff other names. Oh, he was just a security technician, a surveillance technician. Oh, he's just event staff. Oh, they're just this and that. Baloney. Time to get real, folks. We need to comply with the law. We need to follow the requirements of our state and have some integrity, be moral about this, ethical about our business, because if we're not, and this was to get out to your clients, there's a good likelihood that they may drop you. And there are many times when security companies do get in trouble and their clients look at their history of problems and they do drop them anyways, even if it wasn't the security officer's fault. They drop them. That's going to conclude this edition of the Private Officer Beat Radio. We're glad that you joined us. Don't be mad at us when we bring you these, direct topics. It's important for us, really, as an industry, to stay on top of things and do things the right way. We always want it to be the right way. And I don't care what anybody else does. I don't care. Security people say this all the time. Well, law enforcement, blah, blah, blah. We're not talking law enforcement. That's not my job to supervise them. I know that they are not perfect. Nobody's perfect. But as an industry, we need to be better. We need to do better. All right, thanks for being here and joining us on this edition of the Private Officer Beat Radio, and we'll see you back here the next time. Until then, be safe, be blessed. We'll see you back on the radio.